Hey everyone, it's Mrs. Bianchi, and we're looking at Math L1, Unit 1 on area of parallelograms. So if you're having difficulty with this lesson, do watch the videos that I have embedded in the Google form. But we're going to talk about number 7 because this one does require to use a little bit of algebra. Step 1 with these types of problems, you're always going to write the formula down for area of a parallelogram, which is area equals base times height. And the next step is to go ahead and substitute in the numbers. So they're telling you here this is the base. So this number is going to go underneath the B. This number is how many square centimeters. That will go underneath the A. And the unknown is the height. So let's put an H next to that. So what does this really mean? This means that 6 times some number that we don't know would equal 42. Anytime we're solving an equation, which is exactly what we're doing in this particular situation, we need to apply the inverse operation. So you look for the variable, you ask yourself, what's happening to the variable? It's being multiplied by 6. And what's the opposite of multiplying a variable by 6? And that would be to divide by 6. But you have to do that to both sides of the equation to keep it balanced. All right, so the 6 are going to simplify to equal 1, and 1 times h would end up being h. But what is 42 divided by 6? Now you should be able to do that in your head. 42 divided by 6. This is the same thing as this. This fraction bar means division. So finish that up and then choose the correct answer for that. Now there's another one that's very similar. It's number 8. It's another one where you have to find the missing dimension. The formula again is area equals base times height. We know the area. The area is here. So this value needs to go underneath the A. The 14 goes underneath the A because it's the area. The base, they're telling us, is 3 5/10. And the height is unknown, so let's write an H. Now, once again, we have an equation. We're looking at algebra. We have to apply the rules for solving an equation, which are whatever's happening to the variable, you do the opposite. So what's happening to the variable? It's being multiplied by 3 5/10. So in other words, what does this equation mean? It means that 3 5/10 times some number would equal 14. The opposite of multiplying a variable by h is to divide it by h. So if we're doing a proper workspace, we would show both sides of the equation being divided by 3 5/10. This would simplify to equaling 1 because this divided by this would equal 1. Bring down the h. And we have to do 14 divided by 3 5/10. Now, if that's not mental math for you, which it probably is not, you could set up the algorithm for that, which would look like this. If you are doing the algorithm for that, this number is, the numerator is always going to be on the inside and would be the dividend. The denominator would always be on the outside of your division box. And, that would go out here, which would be the dividend. So whenever you have a decimal in your divisor, you would want to multiply by 10. So if we multiply, in this case, or I should say we should clear the decimal by multiplying it by a power of 10 to make it a whole number. So in this case, that means multiplying it by 10. So if this is being multiplied by 10, this has to be multiplied by 10. So here's where the decimal is now. And if we multiply it by 10, that's the same as moving the decimal over one position. So the decimal would go right there. And if you wanted to, you could put another 0 there. That's not going to change the value. So you're really finding out how many times 35 goes into 140. Now, in times when your teacher will let you use a calculator, open up your calculator, and you can go ahead and put in 14 divided by 3 5/10. And look at what it says on the display. Now, you don't have to wonder, did you get it right? Because you can take your number, which you just saw on the calculator was 4, multiply it by 3 5/10, and that should give you 14 as a check. Let's take a look at the next question. This one says, find the area of the parallelogram. And there's actually a part A to this because they mentioned that somebody makes a mistake and they get an area that's different than what it should be. So I want to remind you all that the base and the height must be perpendicular to each other. I always like to look for that right angle, and this is the symbol, the perpendicular symbol, and it's almost like they're little arrows pointing at the numbers that you're going to need. So what are they pointing at? It's pointing at this number, which is 9. We might call that the base, so I didn't trace that very well. And it's pointing at this number, 6 4/10. So I could slide that number anywhere along this, and it's still going to be the height of this thing. So those are the numbers that you need. We're doing area equals base times height. We can call this the base, which is 9, and we'll call 6 4/10 the height, and that'll give us the area. Now, the number that's not necessary here is this number, 7. If we were interested in perimeter, we would need that number because remember, that would be the distance going around the figure. But we're interested in the area, and we need the base and the height, and recall that those two numbers have to be perpendicular to each other. So if you finish up by multiplying these two numbers together, you'll get the answer. Now, if you're not allowed to use a calculator, the recommended way to set up this algorithm is you would set it up off to the side. I usually recommend taking the factor that has more digits and putting that on top. This has 2 digits. This only has 1. If you do that, that'll make your computation just a little bit easier. And I'll get you started here, but you're going to finish it up. This times this would be 36. You're going to multiply 9 times 6, come up with a number, add the 3 to that. Just remember to write that number down. And don't forget, you've got to move the decimal over 1 position to the left. So don't forget, you're going to have a number here, but you have to move that decimal over 1 to the left. All right, so look at the answer choices on your Google form to see what matches that. So that's 10B. So that one is this one right here. Look to see if you have the answer choice and make sure you bubble that in. Now, your teachers are going to be expecting you to turn in your work. We talked about in class how you can put it on paper if you prefer, but the next school day where this is due, you come into the classroom and put your work in the basket. Otherwise, you're allowed to attach a Jamboard or some other digital method of turning in your work. But I would expect to see all of this on your piece of paper. All right, hopefully you found this helpful.